Our cul-de-sac on Maple Street had always been the kind of place where children played until streetlights came on and neighbors brought casseroles when someone was sick. It was not perfect, but it was home, predictable and safe. That predictability was everything to Emily and me. I am Caroline Mitchell, single mother to my 10-year-old daughter Emily, who was diagnosed with autism spectrum disorder when she was 3 years old. Emily finds comfort in patterns, in knowing what comes next. Change sends her world into chaos. Our daily routine was sacred. Every afternoon at exactly 4:30, Emily would take her box of sidewalk chalk and begin creating colorful masterpieces on our concrete driveway. Suns with smiling faces, stars with perfect points, names of people she loved written in rainbow letters. This ritual was more than art. It was therapy. Her occupational therapist had recommended these activities to help with Emily's fine motor skills and sensory processing. After finishing her chalk drawings, Emily would take her 20-minute walk around the block. The same path, the same pace, the same wave to old Mr. Henderson who tended his roses at the corner house. He always waved back, understanding the importance of consistency in Emily's world. "Right on time, Emily," he would call out gently, never too loud to startle her sensitive hearing. Most neighbors understood Emily's needs, even if they did not fully comprehend autism itself. They kept their music down during her nap time. They warned us before setting off fireworks on holidays. They were good people who had become an extended family to us after my divorce 3 years ago. That extended family feeling was why I immediately noticed the unfamiliar black SUV that parked near our community mailbox one Tuesday afternoon in April. It had no markings, no company logo, but the way it sat there, engine running, windows tinted, sent a chill through me that I could not explain. Call it maternal instinct or just plain suspicion. I watched from our kitchen window as two men stepped out. Both wore matching dark blue polo shirts with some kind of embroidered logo I could not make out from a distance. One was tall and thin with close-cropped hair that made his ears stick out. The other was shorter with the bulky build of someone who spent too many hours at the gym. They carried clipboards and had walkie-talkies clipped to their belts. They looked official enough to make neighbors nervous, but not official enough to be actual law enforcement. Emily was in the backyard, so I stepped onto the porch, arms crossed, watching as they made their way slowly down the street, stopping to take notes and occasionally photographs of various houses. When they spotted me, their demeanor changed instantly. Fake smiles appeared as they adjusted their course toward my home. "Good afternoon, ma'am," the taller one called out, his voice carrying an unearned authority. "We are with Neighborhood Patrol, just doing our rounds to ensure community standards are being maintained." He gestured vaguely at his shirt where I could now read Neighborhood Patrol stitched in white thread. "What Neighborhood Patrol?" I asked, not moving from my porch. "We do not have an HOA here." "New management company," the shorter one said smoothly. "Contracted by several homeowners to ensure property values are protected. We will be implementing some new rules starting next month." "What rules?" I asked. "And which homeowners hired you? This neighborhood has never had formal management." They exchanged glances. The tall one cleared his throat. "We will be distributing information packets soon. Just be aware that there will be stricter enforcement of sidewalk use and property appearance standards." Something about the way he emphasized sidewalk use made my skin crawl. They were looking at Emily's chalk art on our driveway, making notes. Before I could question them further, they nodded curtly and continued down the street, leaving me with an uneasy feeling that would soon prove to be justified. That night I checked and double-checked the locks on our doors and windows. I told myself I was being paranoid. But sometimes, paranoia is just awareness in disguise. and awareness would be our only protection in the days that followed. Over the next week, the black SUV became a fixture on our street. Sometimes it parked at the cul-de-sac entrance. Other times it idled directly across from our house. The men inside watched. They took notes. They spoke into their walkie-talkies with exaggerated importance. They never identified themselves beyond neighborhood patrol, never offered business cards or contact information for their supposed management company. What they did offer were warnings, increasingly specific and unsettling warnings that seemed targeted at Emily and me. The first came after Emily's afternoon walk. She had stopped to examine a caterpillar on the community sidewalk, crouching down to observe its movements with the intense focus characteristic of her autism. She never bothered anyone during these walks. She never trespassed on private property. Yet the tall man approached her, camera phone raised, recording her as she stimmed, rocking slightly, hands flapping with excitement over her discovery. "Young lady," he called out sharply, causing Emily to startle. "This sidewalk is for transit only. No loitering or playing allowed under the new regulations." I had been watching from our driveway and immediately ran over. "She is not loitering," I said, placing myself between him and my daughter. "She is taking her daily walk, which is her right as a resident here." "New rules coming into effect," he said, continuing to record. "Children must be actively supervised on community property at all times." "She is supervised, by me, her mother, and stop recording my child immediately." He lowered the phone but did not turn it off, just documenting potential violations, for the record. That night a printed paper appeared under our door. It looked official with a header reading "Violation Notice" in bold letters. Below was typed, "Unsupervised minor on community property, warning." There was no signature, no contact information, just a vague threat about further action if the violation continued. The next day, it was Emily's chalk art that drew their attention. The shorter man took photographs of her colorful drawings, making notes on his clipboard. Hours later, another notice. "Defacement of community property, warning." Our driveway, our property, not community property. I checked our deed to confirm what I already knew. We owned to the street. There was no easement that would give any patrol authority over our driveway. I decided to canvass the neighborhood, going door to door to ask about this mysterious new management company. Most neighbors were as confused as I was. Mrs. Gonzalez had received similar warnings about her garden gnomes. The Patels had been cited for excessive cultural decorations during Diwali, but no one could tell me who had hired these men or what authority they actually possessed. A few neighbors simply closed their doors when I mentioned the patrol. "Do not want trouble," Mr. Chen whispered before shutting his door with a soft click. That fear, the way it spread silently through our once friendly neighborhood, was perhaps more disturbing than the patrol itself. I returned home to find 3 more violation notices, one for trash bins visible from the street on trash day, one for excessive noise. Emily had laughed while playing in our backyard, and one for unauthorized gathering. 2 of Emily's classmates had visited for a supervised playdate. That evening, Emily had a meltdown. The disruption to her routine, the strange men watching her, the tension she could sense, it all became too much. She curled into a ball on her bed, rocking and crying. I held her as best she would allow, whispering reassurances that felt increasingly hollow. Once Emily finally fell asleep, I paced our living room, anger and helplessness battling inside me. I needed help, but the police would likely dismiss this as a neighborhood dispute. Most of my family lived states away, except for one person, my father. Major Robert Carter, United States Army, retired after 30 years of service. He had been stationed overseas for most of my childhood, but now lived just 2 hours away. We were not as close as I wished we could be. Military life had created distance, and my father had never been an emotionally expressive man. But if anyone understood intimidation tactics and how to counter them, it was him. I dialed his number, surprised by how my hand trembled. It went to voicemail. "Dad," I said, fighting to steady my voice. "There is something happening here. Some men claiming to be neighborhood patrol are harassing Emily, recording her, leaving threatening notices. I do not know what they really want, but it feels wrong. Dangerous even. If you could call me back." I paused. "We could use your help." I hung up, not expecting much. My father had his own life now, his own routines, but something had to change before these men escalated further. I just did not know it would happen so soon or so dramatically. The next afternoon brought unseasonably warm weather. Emily was excited to use her new set of pastel chalks, a gift from her art therapist to encourage creative expression. She settled onto our driveway in her usual spot, humming softly to herself as she began sketching an elaborate solar system with planets of varying sizes and colors. I was inside preparing her afternoon snack when I heard the SUV engine. Through the kitchen window, I saw it parked directly in front of our house, blocking part of our driveway. Both men exited quickly, moving with purposeful strides toward Emily. Something in their body language set off alarm bells in my head. This was not a casual visit or routine patrol. By the time I reached the front door, they had positioned themselves on either side of Emily, effectively trapping her between our mailbox and their vehicle. Emily had gone still, chalk clutched in her white-knuckled grip. Her humming transformed into a high-pitched whine that I recognized as the prelude to sensory overload. "Young lady, you need to stop defacing private property immediately," the taller man was saying, his voice unnecessarily loud and harsh. "This is a direct violation of Code 47 of the Community Standards." Emily did not respond, could not respond. Her ability to process language deteriorates during stress. She stared at the ground, body rigid, the whining growing louder as her distress increased. "Did you hear me?" he demanded, stepping closer. "Put down the chalk now." I burst through the door and ran down our walkway. "Get away from her," I shouted. "You are scaring her." The shorter man turned to me, clipboard held like a shield. "Ma'am, your daughter is damaging HOA property. This is your third violation this week." "This is our property." I reached Emily and placed my hands gently on her shoulders, feeling the tremors running through her small body. "And there is no HOA here. You have no authority." "We have every authority," the tall one insisted. "And your child cannot be left unsupervised if she has special needs. That is negligence." Emily's whine turned into a full meltdown. She dropped to the ground, hands over her ears, rocking back and forth as tears streamed down her face. The men did not back away. Instead, the shorter one pulled out his phone and began recording. "This is exactly the concerning behavior we have noted," he said clinically. "Child Protective Services will need to be notified about your inability to properly supervise a vulnerable minor." Something snapped inside me. Pure maternal fury propelled me forward. I shoved the shorter man away from my daughter. "Stop filming her. Get off our property now before I call the police." "We are the authorities here," the tall one said, stepping toward me with a menacing posture. "And you just assaulted my colleague. That will be reported as well." I knelt beside Emily, trying to shield her while also facing these men who would not back down. Neighbors peeked out from behind curtains and blinds, watching but not intervening. Their silence felt like betrayal. "Leave us alone," I said, my voice breaking despite my efforts to sound strong. Just leave us alone. Not until we document these violations properly, the shorter man said, recovering his composure and raising his phone again. Stand aside, ma'am. That was when I heard the familiar rumble of a diesel engine. A red pickup truck pulled up behind the SUV, blocking it in. The driver's door opened and my father stepped out. Major Robert Carter did not rush, did not shout. He simply walked toward us with the measured pace of a man who had faced far more dangerous situations than this. At 65, he still maintained the physical discipline of his military years, straight-backed, clear-eyed, purposeful. Caroline, he acknowledged me with a nod before turning his full attention to the two men. What is happening here? The men exchanged glances, clearly recalibrating their approach in the presence of this new variable. The taller one recovered first, extending his clipboard like credentials. Sir, we are with Neighborhood Patrol. We are addressing community violations with this resident. My father did not look at the clipboard. He looked directly into the man's eyes. May I see your identification, please? We have authorization from the Homeowners Association, the man replied, avoiding the direct request. That was not what I asked, my father said quietly. Your personal identification and your official credentials, please. The shorter man stepped forward. Listen, old man, we do not answer to you. We have jurisdiction here. My father did not flinch at the disrespect. He simply raised an eyebrow and repeated, slower this time, your identification, now. The atmosphere had shifted. Even Emily sensed it, her rocking slowing as she peeked up at her grandfather from behind her hands. The neighbors had emerged from their homes, gathering at a distance to watch the confrontation unfold. One thing I had learned about my father over the years. When his voice got quieter, the situation had become more dangerous, not for him, but for whoever stood in his way. My father removed his sunglasses and tucked them methodically into his shirt pocket. His movements were unhurried, deliberate, the calm before a storm. Emily had stopped rocking, her eyes tracking her grandfather with unusual focus. Even in her distress, she recognized the presence of protection. I will ask one more time, my father said, his voice carrying the weight of command without raising its volume. Your identification and credentials. The taller man shifted his weight, a subtle tell of discomfort. We are contracted security professionals. Our ID is right here. He tapped the embroidered Neighborhood Patrol logo on his chest. My father leaned forward slightly, examining the logo with exaggerated interest. Interesting. No badge number, no certification information, no department affiliation. He straightened. Now show me your actual government-issued identification that authorizes you to detain and interrogate a minor child. We were not detaining anyone, the shorter man protested, but his hand moved nervously to his walkie-talkie. Just enforcing community standards. My father nodded toward the device. That is an interesting radio, Motorola FRS model sold at sporting goods stores, not connected to any dispatch center. He pointed to their matching shirts. No shoulder patches indicating certification, no service numbers. His gaze moved to their belts. No official equipment beyond what civilians can purchase. The taller man flushed. Look, we do not have to prove anything to you. We work for. For whom exactly? My father interrupted. The Homeowners Association that does not exist, the management company with no name, or perhaps. He paused, letting silence build tension before continuing. Perhaps you work for whoever is trying to pressure residents into selling their homes in this neighborhood. The shorter man's eyes widened fractionally, enough to confirm my father had struck gold. He recovered quickly, but the damage was done. "That is ridiculous," he blustered. "We are legitimate security contractors." "Then you will not mind providing your business license number," my father suggested reasonably, "or your private security certification. State law requires it to be carried at all times when operating in an official capacity." Emily had scooted closer to me, her breathing slower now as she watched her grandfather systematically dismantle these men's authority. I wrapped my arm around her shoulders, feeling her relax incrementally. This was a kind of protection she understood, logical, structured, unambiguous. The taller man tried a different approach. "Sir, we understand your concern as a family member, but this situation predates your arrival. This woman," he gestured dismissively toward me, "has repeatedly violated community standards and shown hostility toward authority figures." "I am her father," my dad stated flatly, "and she has violated no legitimate rules because you have no legitimate authority." He turned slightly toward the gathering neighbors. "Does anyone here recognize these men as officially sanctioned by any legal homeowners association or management company?" Silence. Then Mrs. Gonzalez called out, "They left violation notices for my garden gnomes last week, but I checked. We do not have an HOA here. Never have." Mr. Patel stepped forward. "They told me my Diwali lights were against regulations. I have lived here 12 years with no issues before." The shorter man's face darkened. He took an aggressive step toward my father. "We do not need validation from these people. Our contract is binding." "Contract with whom?" my father pressed. "Name the management company. Name the developers. Name anyone with legal standing in this neighborhood." The shorter man lunged forward suddenly, shoving my father's shoulder. "Back off, old man." What happened next was so fluid it seemed choreographed. My father sidestepped, captured the man's extended arm at the wrist and elbow, and with a simple redirection of momentum, guided him face down onto our driveway. The man was not injured, not even in pain from what I could tell, but he was completely immobilized by my father's precisely applied leverage. "That was unwise," my father informed him calmly, maintaining the hold with minimal effort. To the taller man who had taken a step back, he added, "I suggest you remain still." Emily watched with fascination, her earlier distress forgotten in the face of this controlled response to chaos. My father had not raised his voice, had not struck anyone, had simply neutralized a threat with minimal force. The taller man raised his hand slightly. "He did not mean anything by it. Just let him up and we will go." "Not quite yet," my father replied. With his free hand, he removed the clipboard from where it had fallen. He examined the violation notices, flipping through several pages. "Interesting. These forms have no legal letterhead, no municipal codes referenced, no contact information for appeals process." He looked up. "But there is a company logo at the bottom, Prestige Development Properties. Does that sound familiar to anyone?" From the crowd, old Mr. Henderson called out, "That is the company that has been sending letters offering to buy our homes, below market value, claiming the neighborhood is declining." A murmur spread through the gathering neighbors as connections were made. These men were not enforcing community standards. They were creating fear and discord to drive down property values and pressure residents to sell. My father reached for the fallen walkie-talkie and pressed the talk button. "This is Major Robert Carter at 743 Maple Circle. Your men have been detained for impersonating officials and harassing residents. The police have been called. Acknowledge." There was a burst of static, then silence, then a hurried disconnect. My father smiled grimly. Someone is listening and now they know we are serious. He looked at me. Caroline, call the police, now. As I pulled out my phone, Emily stood up shakily and moved to stand beside her grandfather. She did not touch him. She rarely initiates physical contact, but she positioned herself deliberately in his protective shadow, her small face set with newfound determination. "Good girl, Emily," my father said softly. "You are very brave." Those simple words of acknowledgement brought tears to my eyes. In the midst of confrontation, he had seen her courage, something many people overlooked because of her diagnosis. The police were on their way. The truth was finally emerging, and my daughter was standing tall beside the man who had just shown her what real authority looked like. 12 minutes later, two police cruisers pulled into our cul-de-sac, lights flashing but sirens silent. Officer Martinez stepped out first, a veteran cop I recognized from community meetings. Her partner was younger, notebook already in hand as he surveyed the scene. My father still holding the shorter man in a controlled position on the ground, the taller man standing with hands visible, and a semicircle of neighbors watching intently. "Major Carter," Officer Martinez approached cautiously, hand resting near but not on her service weapon. "Caroline called this in. Want to tell me what we have here?" My father nodded respectfully. "These two individuals have been impersonating code enforcement officers. They have been issuing fraudulent violation notices, intimidating residents, and specifically targeting my granddaughter, who has special needs. I can release this gentleman if you are ready to take over," he added, indicating the man he had restrained. Officer Martinez nodded, and her partner moved forward with handcuffs. My father released his hold with practiced precision, stepping back as the officer secured the man. There was no resistance now, just sullen compliance. "We have done nothing illegal," the taller man protested as the second officer approached him. "We are private security contractors." Officer Martinez picked up the clipboard my father had set aside. "Private security requires identification and proper certification displayed at all times in this county." She flipped through the violation notices, her expression hardening. "These appear to be designed to mimic official municipal citations. That crosses into impersonation territory." She looked more closely at the shorter man now standing with hands cuffed behind him. Recognition flickered in her eyes. "Wait a minute. Jonathan Mercer, we have dealt with you before. That HOA scam in Riverdale last year." The man looked away, saying nothing. "These are the same guys?" her partner asked. "Not exactly the same operation, but similar MO," Officer Martinez replied. "And if I am not mistaken," she turned to the taller man, "you must be Keith Barnett. You two usually work together." The taller man, Keith, maintained a stony silence, but his clenched jaw confirmed her identification. My father handed over the walkie-talkie. "They have been communicating with someone, possibly a supervisor or the developer they are working for." Officer Martinez bagged the device. "We will trace that. Now I need statements from everyone involved." She looked at Emily, who was standing close to me again. "Is your daughter okay to answer some questions?" Before I could respond, my father interjected gently. "My granddaughter has autism and has experienced significant distress today. Perhaps we could arrange for her to provide her statement with appropriate support another time." The officer nodded immediately. "Of course, we can have someone from our special victims unit with appropriate training meet with her when she is ready." She turned to address the gathered neighbors. "We need statements from witnesses too. Who has received these violation notices?" Hands went up throughout the crowd. Mrs. Gonzalez stepped forward first. They told me I would be fined $500 if I did not remove my garden gnomes, said they were non-conforming decorative items. Mr. Patel followed. They photographed my children playing in our front yard, called it excessive noise and activity. One by one, neighbors shared their stories of intimidation, threats of fines, warnings about property values declining, suggestions that they should consider selling before enforcement gets stricter. Officer Martinez documented each account methodically. When she came to old Mr. Henderson, he added a crucial detail. After they left me a notice about my rose bushes being too tall, I got a letter the very next day offering to buy my house for 15% below market value from Prestige Development Properties. The same company logo that appears on the bottom of these citation forms, my father noted. The younger officer was examining the men's vehicle now. Martinez, you should see this. Back seat is full of real estate documents, purchase agreements, disclosures, all with the same developer's letterhead. Officer Martinez turned to Jonathan and Keith. Gentlemen, creating a false impression of official authority to coerce property sales falls under real estate fraud. That is a felony in this state. She read them their rights clearly, emphasizing, anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law. Jonathan broke first. It was Keith's idea to use the fake violation notices. I just did what I was told. Keith glared at him. Shut up, John, do not say another word. Too late for that, Officer Martinez observed as her partner led them toward separate patrol cars. She turned back to us. We will need formal statements from all of you at the station, especially you, Major Carter, since you witnessed the direct intimidation of your granddaughter. My father nodded solemnly. Of course, officer, whatever you need. As the police cruisers pulled away with Jonathan and Keith in the back seats, neighbors began to approach us, tentatively at first, then with increasing warmth. They apologized for not intervening sooner. They thanked my father. They offered supportive words to Emily, careful not to overwhelm her with too much attention. The cul-de-sac buzzed with conversation as community bonds, strained by weeks of intimidation, began to reform stronger than before. My father stood quietly at the edge of our driveway, watching as Emily carefully returned to her abandoned chalk drawing. She was adding something new to her solar system, a small figure in a red truck, floating protectively among the stars. The following week brought changes to our neighborhood that none of us could have anticipated. Jonathan Mercer and Keith Barnett were formally charged with multiple counts: impersonating code enforcement officials, harassment, intimidation of witnesses, and conspiracy to commit real estate fraud. Their employer, Prestige Development Properties, was now under investigation by the state attorney's office. The two men were facing significant jail time, especially Jonathan with his prior record of similar schemes. Emily's school counselor connected us with a trauma-informed therapist who specialized in working with children on the autism spectrum. Ms. Wilson arrived at our home with a toolkit specifically designed to help Emily process what had happened through visual aids and social stories. Emily responded well to these structured approaches, gradually returning to her routine with new confidence. Your daughter is remarkably resilient, Ms. Wilson told me after their third session. She has developed her own narrative about what happened, one where her grandfather is a protector who uses words and knowledge rather than violence to solve problems. That is an extremely healthy framework. The media picked up our story after police released details of the development company's tactics. Fake HOA scammers targeting vulnerable residents, read the headline in the county newspaper. They described my father as a quick-thinking veteran who exposed real estate fraudsters. Local television sent a crew to interview neighbors about the scheme, careful to respect our request that Emily not be filmed or approached directly. My father, uncomfortable with the attention but recognizing its value and warning other communities, agreed to a brief statement. He appeared on the evening news in his civilian clothes, but with the unmistakable bearing of his military years. These individuals preyed on community fears and targeted the most vulnerable among us, he told the reporter. They counted on silence and isolation. The lesson here is simple. Know your actual property rights, verify the credentials of anyone claiming authority, and most importantly, stand together as neighbors. His statement inspired our cul-de-sac to action. With support from Officer Martinez, I helped organize a legitimate neighborhood watch program, properly registered with the police department, transparent in its operations, and focused on community building rather than enforcement. We held our first meeting in our driveway, with Emily serving lemonade to the neighbors she was now beginning to trust again. During that meeting, my father gave an impromptu safety workshop that drew on his decades of military experience. Authority requires accountability, he explained to the attentive group. Anyone with real power carries identification they will gladly show you. Anyone who refuses is suspect by definition. He demonstrated how to verify badges, explained what real code enforcement documentation looks like, and outlined the legal rights homeowners have when confronted by anyone claiming authority on their property. Neighbors took notes, asked questions, and for the first time in weeks, laughed together without tension. The most surprising revelation came 3 days later when the police investigation uncovered internal emails from Prestige Development Properties. Jonathan had agreed to testify against the company in exchange for a reduced sentence. He revealed that they had been specifically targeting homes with vulnerable residents, elderly homeowners, single parents, families with special needs children, believing them to be easier to intimidate into selling. They had a list, Officer Martinez told us during her follow-up visit. Your address was flagged as single mother, disabled child, high priority target. The rage I felt at this calculated exploitation was tempered only by the knowledge that their scheme had backfired spectacularly. Instead of isolating us, they had united us. Instead of devaluing our neighborhood, they had strengthened our community bonds. A local attorney offered pro bono services to neighbors who had received the fraudulent violation notices, helping them file a class action lawsuit against Prestige Development Properties. The company's business license was suspended pending investigation, their assets frozen by court order. Emily, observing all this activity with her characteristic quiet attention, surprised me one evening by presenting a drawing she had made in art therapy. It showed our house with a rainbow above it, surrounded by other houses with smiling stick figures holding hands. In the driveway stood 3 figures, a tall one labeled Grandpa, a medium one labeled Mom, and a small one labeled me. Safe now, she said simply, a phrase that meant everything coming from my daughter who spoke sparingly but always precisely. I called my father that night to share this moment. His gruff voice softened when I described Emily's drawing. She understands more than most adults, he said. Safety is not about locks and alarms. It is about people standing together. For the first time since my divorce, I felt that Emily and I were truly not alone. The summer air shimmered with heat as Emily carefully selected a purple chalk from her new 64 color set, a gift from the neighbors after everything that had happened. She knelt on our concrete driveway, the same spot where fear had overwhelmed her weeks before, now reclaimed as her canvas. With methodical precision, she drew a perfect circle, then another inside it, creating a planet in her expanding chalk solar system. I watched from the porch swing my father had installed during his extended visit. He had originally planned to stay only a few days but had stretched it to 2 weeks, helping neighbors install security cameras, reinforcing Emily's bedroom window that had always stuck, building this swing where I now sat with a cup of cooling tea. Small acts of protection that required no words. "The security system is active," he announced, stepping onto the porch with his tablet displaying 4 camera views of our property. Motion detection, night vision, cloud storage for 30 days of footage. He sat beside me, the swing creaking slightly under his weight. Not because we expect trouble, but because we know what it looks like now. I nodded, understanding the distinction. These cameras were not born of paranoia, but of wisdom. Eyes that would allow us to respond appropriately rather than fearfully to whatever came next. The investigation into Prestige Development Properties had revealed an orchestrated campaign to acquire our entire street for a commercial complex. The company's CEO now faced criminal charges, his scheme exposed by the very people he had targeted as easy marks. Our neighborhood had transformed in unexpected ways. Every Saturday morning now featured a community breakfast in the cul-de-sac, folding tables laden with potluck contributions. Mr. Patel taught neighbors how to make authentic chai tea. Mrs. Gonzalez started a container gardening club. Old Mr. Henderson, discovering Emily's interest in astronomy, had set up his telescope in the communal green space on clear nights, patiently helping her locate constellations. These gatherings always included a casual safety minute where neighbors shared information, verified facts, and discussed legitimate community concerns. No violations, no threats, just neighbors looking out for each other. My father stood and walked to the edge of the porch where he had mounted a small wooden plaque. Hand-carved by Mr. Henderson, it read simply, "Protected by Major Carter." Not boastful, a simple statement of fact, a reminder to any who might come with ill intent that this home, this child, this family had defenders. Emily completed her chalk masterpiece and stood back to examine it critically. The solar system now extended across our entire driveway, planets with moons, stars with colorful rays, comets with streaming tails. And weaving between them like celestial guardians, small figures she had added, neighbors holding hands in a protective circle around her central sun. "Grandpa," she called, one of the few words she used reliably. "Look." My father descended the steps slowly, examining Emily's creation with genuine interest. He crouched beside her, careful to maintain the personal space she preferred. "This is remarkable, Emily. You have created an entire universe here." Emily nodded, pleased with his assessment. "Safe universe," she said, pointing to the figures circling her son. My father studied the drawing more closely. "I see. The neighbors are protecting the solar system. Very wise. In space, as on Earth, we are stronger together." Emily rarely smiled broadly. Her expressions tended to be subtle, but the slight upturn of her lips conveyed deep satisfaction. She offered my father a piece of chalk, a rare invitation to participate in her creative process. He accepted with appropriate solemnity, adding a small red truck parked at the edge of the galaxy. From across the street, Mrs. Gonzalez waved as she wheeled her recycling bin to the curb. Emily returned the wave without hesitation, a social interaction that would have overwhelmed her months ago. Mr. Patel's children rode past on bicycles, calling out greetings that Emily acknowledged with a raised hand. These simple exchanges represented monumental progress in her comfort with the world outside our home. Later that afternoon, Officer Martinez pulled up in her personal vehicle, off-duty, but committed to the community policing approach she championed. She carried a folder of official materials, real ones, with proper letterhead and legal standing. "Thought you might like these," she said, handing me several laminated cards. "Official property rights statements from the county. Explains exactly what authorities can and cannot do on private property." She smiled at Emily, who was watching from a comfortable distance. "And I brought something special for our neighborhood artist." She presented a small package to Emily, a junior police badge with "Community Helper" engraved beneath the shield. Not a toy, but a simplified version of the real badges given to civilian volunteers. "This is for someone who helps keep their neighborhood safe by reporting when something does not seem right," Officer Martinez explained, placing it carefully in Emily's outstretched hand rather than pinning it directly on her clothing, respecting her sensory sensitivities. Emily examined the badge with intense focus before placing it carefully beside her chalk collection, a position of honor in her meticulously organized world. After Officer Martinez departed, my father and I sat on the porch swing again, watching as neighborhood children gradually gravitated toward Emily's driveway art. They did not crowd her or demand her attention, having learned from their parents how to interact respectfully with her. Instead, they admired her work from a distance, occasionally asking permission to add small details to the outer edges of her galaxy. "You have raised an extraordinary child," my father said quietly. "Her perception, her resilience, the way she communicates without words." "She is extraordinary," I agreed, "but I worry about her future. The world is not always kind to those who are different." My father considered this. "True, but look what happened here. When those men thought her differences made her vulnerable, they underestimated the strength that comes with being unique. Emily sees patterns others miss. She notices details others overlook. Those are powerful gifts." He gestured toward the chalk solar system where Emily was now carefully labeling planets with their scientific names. "She creates order from chaos, finds beauty in precision. The world needs more of that, not less." We watched as Emily instructed a younger child on the proper way to hold chalk for optimal control, a rare moment of direct teaching from my usually self-contained daughter. The transformation in her confidence was visible, tangible. That evening, as neighborhood children returned to their homes and street lights flickered on, Emily completed her masterpiece with one final addition: a protective circle around our driveway, connecting all the planets, stars, and guardian figures in her chalk universe. A boundary that defined not what was kept out, but what was valued within. My father prepared to depart the next morning, his truck packed. His temporary room in our home returned to its original function as Emily's sensory space. He stood at the edge of our property, surveying the security cameras, the new motion-activated lights, the reinforced locks he had installed. "Physical security is important," he acknowledged, "but what you have built here is stronger than any alarm system. Community, trust, vigilance without fear." He knelt to Emily's level, respecting her boundaries while making direct eye contact, a connection she now permitted with selected trusted individuals. "Remember, Emily, you are never alone. Even when I am not here physically, I am watching over you, just like the stars in your solar system." Emily processed this, then reached into her pocket and withdrew a small object, a smooth blue stone she had carried for years as a comfort item. She placed it deliberately in my father's weathered palm. "For protection," she said. My father closed his fingers around the stone, recognizing the significance of her gesture. "I will carry it always." He stood, clearing his throat against unexpected emotion. No grandson to carry on the military tradition, but a granddaughter with the heart of a guardian, more than I could have hoped for. As his truck pulled away, I placed my arm gently around Emily's shoulders. She leaned slightly into the contact, a newly comfortable response to affection. Together, we watched until his tail lights disappeared around the corner. "Is Grandpa coming back?" Emily asked, her voice small but clear. "Yes," I assured her. "Next month for the community safety workshop, and for your birthday." She nodded, satisfied with the concrete schedule. "Good, he understands the rules." "What rules, sweetie?" Emily looked up at me with the penetrating gaze that sometimes revealed the depth of comprehension behind her social challenges. "Our driveway, our rules." Those four simple words encompassed everything we had learned through this ordeal. Our home was indeed our castle. Our boundaries were valid. Our differences were our strength. And no false authority would ever threaten that again. As we walked back toward our house, neighbors called greetings from their porches. Emily's chalk universe glowed in the fading light, a vibrant testament to resilience and creativity. Tomorrow, rain might wash it away. But Emily would simply begin again, rebuilding her world with confident hands and the knowledge that she was safe, valued, and protected, not just by walls and cameras, but by a community that had found its courage through defending its most vulnerable member. A child with special needs had become the catalyst for an entire neighborhood's transformation. And in the reflected glow of porch lights coming on across our cul-de-sac, I saw the truth in my father's words. Safety was not about locks and alarms. It was about people standing together. Our driveway, our rules, our community, our strength.